Hello and welcome to Conversations from the ANF podcast. In this episode, we speak to birth father Andy about his experiences of the court system, losing his daughter to adoption and the challenges of maintaining contact. Andy highlights the combative nature of the system that led to the decision in the courts for adoption and the impact on him and his family. As always, if you've experienced of adoption, fostering or special guardianship from any perspective, personal or professional, and would like to share that on the podcast, please do get in touch. Facebook, Twitter, or you can email us at andfpodcast@gmail.com.
Hi, I'm Andy, a birth father of a daughter who was adopted back in 2012 at the age of 3. Going back to the start of the whole event, as you can say, it was back in early 2010. My daughter, good 9-10 months old, separated from my ex-partner, the mother, and she was living in a mother and baby unit. I was in my own flat, and basically from that, social services were called in due to my ex-partner's postnatal depression, which sort of triggered alarm bells with the mother and baby unit. I didn't know anything about it at the time, up until a few days later that my daughter had actually been taken into foster care. Questions were asked about why, then also why I hadn't been contacted to keep me updated on this. And they explained to me the reasons why, because of the my ex-partner's depression at the time, mental health, and stated that my daughter was a bit neglected in a way, not eating and drinking, which is a bit of a shock because even though my ex-partner was suffering with mental health, she always put our daughter first, no matter what. And she was well looked after, always well dressed, fed, drank. But social services at the time basically stated to me that they were worried that she wasn't eating enough, drinking enough. She was dehydrated when they arrived, that she was hungry. So on this telephone call with social services on that day, basically they were coming out with all sorts of reasons why they taken my daughter into foster care. So at the time I was with my mum, who isn't with me now. She passed away in 2013. But I was with my mum. Mum sort of asked me to ask that question of why haven't they contacted me or brought my daughter to me, and they kept on coming back with the wrongful accusations from when I was 13, which I thought was a bit wrong, because these accusations that I was accused of when I was 13 were never proven. There was nothing there. There was no evidence, and all the interviews that they did to get all the evidence together never matched up. So everything was basically dropped because there was just nothing there. So social services were just holding on to something that was brought up from my past. So, bearing in mind, I was 13 at the time of these accusations, and I was 24, nearly 25 when I became a father. That these accusations would come back at me, and it's frustrating because there was just nothing there for the social services to actually work with. So after a few disagreements on the phone, I decided to ask the question again of what was my daughter doing when they arrived. And he slipped up and basically said that she was sat on the floor watching TV, eating some toast and juice. So I was a little bit confused. And I was like, I just don't get that. You told me that she wasn't eating and wasn't drinking. But as social services were back in 2010, no matter what you say, they weren't interested. And through like going into court to see my daughter, to get contact, to basically spend an hour with my daughter every week, it was tough. And then when you got social services just constantly going on about this one accusation from when I was 13, it was really taking a big impact on me. And I was put through quite a lot of, would you say, tests, psychological reports, and them sort of things that social services want you to prove to be a good father, which I was quite happy to do. I was quite happy to jump through hoops to do what I possibly could to keep my daughter within the family, bring my daughter back to my side, and make sure that she still had contact with her mother.
Of course, yeah.
But because my ex-partner, the mother, suffered with mental health, and they took my daughter away from her, her mental health dipped considerably, very fast. And it come across as social services used that to their advantage. And going through court, I think I went to about 3 or 4 different courtrooms, family courts, and spread out over the northwest. And I ended up at Warrington Family Court. And the judge there was disappointed that I was moving from court to court with different judges. And she decided that she wasn't going to let this court case go. This is hers now. And from that, she took over. So I carried on going through these tasks that they kept on coming up with. And it was a psychological report that was the hard-hitting one, because I did the psychological report and I answered the questions as truthfully as I possibly can. I got the report back, and they basically made me out to be like a sex pest, that I could not go a day without having some type of sexual intercourse. And I was like, sat there thinking, what? How is that? And the solicitor that I was with, I brought it up with them, and they said, oh, well, now that's basically, that's what it is. Can't do anything about it. That's what you've come across to them in that report. I was like, right, okay. Don't get that, because I'm not that sort of person. And I give it a few weeks, contacting solicitor to find out that the solicitor wasn't actually interested. She didn't like men. It was the worst thing I'd ever encountered, and I just didn't understand why someone would take a case on like this if they weren't even interested. But it all came down to the legal aid, because at the end of the day, legal aid, they're getting paid for it. No matter what the outcome is, they're getting paid for it. So it was a bit of a shocker for me. So I decided to hunt around and look for another solicitor who was quite willing to take all this on. I've got all my documents sent over to a new solicitor, and I highlighted so many different things that was out of context of what I actually am. And from then, I had to have a new psychological report. I had to do some other reports that they wanted me to basically prove myself to them, just to see if there was anything malice in it. And I gave the original psychologist who did the report in the first place the second chance to rectify it. And it turned out that the report that I had the second time was nowhere near the first one.
Right.
And I didn't say anything different, which is very, very unusual. So as I'm jumping through hoops and getting all these assessments done, I'm still having contact. So if I'm that type of person who was having, couldn't go a day without having intercourse or sexual interactions, I'm still having contact with my daughter every week, which really confused me. I didn't understand. And even after getting a fresh report, the contact never stopped. I still was able to take her out of the contact centre to play areas, farms to spend that time with. And going through the 2 years of in and out of court, different courts, even ending up at a Crown Court where you don't usually find a family situation in, it was daunting having to travel all over the Northwest just to fight for your own child. And it was one of the most awful things I had to do. And my parents, my mum mainly, because my dad is this, he'll go with whatever my mum said. So, so you could say he's under the thumb in a way, but she was adamant that she was never going to let my daughter leave the family. And she put herself up for guardianship for my daughter, which I was really happy with, and I was in awe of her because she decided to do that off her own back. And they were in the 50s, so it's quite an old age for adopting a 2 to 3 year old. But towards the end of the court proceedings, I had to sort of force my mum to pull out because she was going to carry on and go through with it and get guardianship and take it from there. But I couldn't let her do that because she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And she was hiding cancer from the family to make sure that my daughter came back to us. But I had to step in and say, no, this isn't right. I can't put you through that. And not only that, put my daughter through that. It's not the nicest of things. So my mum agreed. And then we went into court. My solicitor basically stated that my mum couldn't really take guardianship due to being terminally ill. And the judge, I think she felt very gutted about it. She came across as really upset because to myself, to my mum, it was the last option in a way.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't have been the last option technically, because I've done everything that I've been asked to do. I've proved myself. There was nothing in a way stopping me. And in all of this, in September 2011, after being with my now wife since late 2010, she gave birth to my son. So I was also a father to my son while fighting for my daughter. But because my relationship with my wife at the time was very fresh, it was like, in a way, a year old or something. They wouldn't even consider her as a potential stepmom for me to take full custody. So I had to sort of. It was difficult because, yes, me and my wife did split up for a few weeks because I think it upset her in a way, because she felt like she wasn't good enough to be a parent to my 2.5-year-old. So it was difficult. And come to January 2012, the decision then was made that my daughter was going to be adopted, and how the judge stated it, that she just basically apologized to me. She just says, I'm really sorry to have to do this. This has gone on a bit too long now. It's taken 2 years to come to a decision, and I understand that you've been doing everything possible to prove yourself, but it's come to that point where we need to adopt your daughter before she's 3 years old. And I just sat there and I just sank in my seat thinking, I've just done everything possible to prove to you that I was a capable father. And I stood up out of the blue. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I stood up and I just said, I don't agree. And I just wanted to make sure that what social services did to me with my daughter, that they weren't going to keep coming back and doing it to me over and over again. So I stood up and I just came out and said, can you guarantee that I will not have any problems going forward with future family? And she asked the social services about it, went through all of it, couldn't get a decent answer from social services because there wasn't anything there. They had nothing to, there was no grounds to force it on me. And the judge just looked at him and said, you can't touch him. There's literally nothing you can do. He hasn't done anything wrong for you to be able to be in this, to put him in this position. I was thinking to myself, how can you say that but then still adopt my daughter? And I just couldn't believe it. And she looked at me and she goes, if the social services come to you and they haven't got a valid reason of why, then make sure that you take it further and sue them. And I'm like, should the judge be telling me this? But at the end of the day, it's my family. I've been hurt already. I don't want to be hurt again. And
of course.
Towards the end, towards the end, I think it was about a week later, they went for all the technicalities of the agreements and stuff. And they basically asked me outright if I'll agree to letterbox once a year. I went, no. I said, no. I said, I'll keep fighting. I said, I've still got a little bit left in me. I will carry on fighting. And they went in and they come out and he goes, what would you want? That's what they're asking. What would you want from this for the adoption to go through? So I reeled off quite a lot of different things. Letterbox twice a year, photographs, reviews, and my solicitor come out, and I was happy in a way because the solicitor come out and said, "We can do this, and you just need to agree to let your daughter. You know it's going to be the right thing to let your daughter go into adoption." And I was like, I can't bring myself to it, but I knew deep down my mum was terminally ill. I know she's going to need me as a support, and the rest of my family to support her as well. With having a 6-month-old as well, I just said, I'll agree, but to these conditions. I'm not happy, but if the reviews are going to be good, which I was hoping for, then it might be quicker that I see my daughter than wait until 18. So it was agreed. I was then asked if I wanted to meet the adopted parents. So I met them at a local pub, fun place for the kids, family place. I don't know if there's many of them left anymore, but it was like a wacky warehouse or something. I'm not quite sure what it was called at the time. But I met them and I thought to myself, I'm going to show them that I'm not the person that I have been made out to be.
Yeah.
And I went there with my mum, who I took with me for the reason of because she will never see my daughter again. So I made that day about the two women in my life at that time. That was the most precious thing, and that was my mum and my daughter. My wife has now taken that role of my mum. She's my go-to person, and I spent that day a good couple of hours at least, chatting to the adoptive parents, playing with my daughter in the wacky warehouse, and God help me, I don't know how I got around half of it, but I did everything possible to make sure that time that I had with my daughter, I made sure that it was memories. And from that, I think it was just over 4 months, I received my first letter, which I think was just one letter for that year because of the timing. It would be a bit silly to try and get two in. So it was once for the first year and then two going forward. And the first few letters were fine. They give quite a lot of information. Even that she broke her arm playing on some skates. So it was information that you, as a father, you want to hear. But after a couple of years, I asked about a review, photographs, to then be told that all that's in my agreement is letterbox twice a year. And I felt so let down, I just did not know where to go. And I was fuming because at the time I've got my son, who was born in 2011. My daughter, who was born in 2013, and my mum passed away in 2013, and I also married my wife in 2013. So 2013 was a very eventful year, and I wanted to share photographs of my two children now with the adoptive parents to show my eldest daughter, and I wanted to have an up-to-date photograph to sort of start showing my kids, because as they've grown older, all they see is the last photograph that I had, which was on the day that I last saw her. So as they're growing up, my eldest daughter isn't, and it was difficult because they keep asking questions, as kids do. But as the years go on, and you wanting to get a bit more information through letterbox, it wasn't getting anything better. It was basically saying the same stuff as what they stated in the previous letter, just adjusted a little bit. So, say the first letter in the year was saying that she liked playing football. She really enjoyed playing football. She's made it into the school team, and then 6 months later, there's nothing even mentioned about a football, like her playing football in the team. It's like she's completely changed a person, and I just couldn't understand how different my daughter could change in 6 months. Which then that started making me question things, and I decided to start asking more questions in my letters, instead of writing about my children, what I've been up to, what we've done in the last 6 months. I started asking questions about, because she was getting to an age of, like my daughter is now, makeup and stuff.
Yeah.
But, and coming down looking like a clown, as you do when they're first starting out. And I just wanted to know if that was something that my eldest daughter wanted to do. And I was asking these questions. Does she like to dye her hair? There was just nothing coming back. There was no questions being asked about my family, her siblings, nothing. And I wrote a letter in 2022. It was a letter just before the adoption week. And I asked quite a lot of questions in that again. And I also put in that I mentioned about me being a daddy and a brother and sister. I'm really looking forward to meeting you when the time is right. And the adoption agency contacted me to state that I couldn't put that in. I couldn't say them words. What they wanted me to say was birth father, birth daddy, birth siblings. And I'm thinking, what's the difference? I'm writing to my daughter. They know that I'm her dad. But I was pulled up on them. I was shocked by it, that I wasn't able to put that type of stuff into my letter. And it was the end of August in 2022. I received a letter back from the adoptive parents, and they used the phrase daddy, mummy, grandparents. And I'm thinking, I understand, because that's what you're coming across to my daughter as. But I don't want to hear that. You're not there. Well, my daughter's mummy. You're not my daughter's daddy. I am, not you. Why is it that I can't say that sort of thing, but they are? So I questioned it, and it come across as that I was getting pushed to one side. It wasn't something that I should be worried about. I'm thinking, well, I'm trying to build a bond with the adoptive parents of my daughter, and I'm hitting the brick wall, and I just couldn't. I just didn't know what I've done wrong. Why is it that 11 years down the line, I'm not getting anything more than what I was in the first place, especially having a marriage, two kids. It's something that's very difficult to take in, and to this day, it's still very difficult. So I've been in touch with the adoption agency, which is Adoption Counts, and I listened to the podcast from Adoption Counts, and some of the stuff that was mentioned in your podcast with them. It's never been like that. They haven't taken an interest into the birth families. They are very adoptive parents orientated. And they are literally, to me, a one-track mind, and I just don't get why they can be in that like mindset of, if a child's been taken into care, that you're a bad person, when not everybody is, and everybody has a chance to change, and they do change. In my case, I don't know what I needed to change. I'm a father to two kids now, so I don't know what I needed to change. But so,
I mean, I guess my thoughts are that Adoption Count's not here to kind of, and I guess they wouldn't feel comfortable sort of commenting on specific situations and circumstances.
No.
But I think it sort of highlights one of the issues that I always reflect on, is that even with the best will in the world, the practice of an agency such as Adoption Counts, and there's loads of different agencies, is that it still hangs on the willingness of adoptive families to engage with that. And also when patterns are set a certain way, it's really hard to break those patterns. And I think one thing I do reflect on as well for adoptive parents is sometimes it can be really difficult to change how you perceive someone, and to perceive birth families as, and again, I'm reluctant to kind of comment or kind of apologize or speak into your situation, but I think sometimes that adoptive families, and I recall from my own experience, I remember when my older children sort of reconnected with some of their birth family, and I remember a real anxiety that we tried to keep suppressed as far as possible, thinking, am I going to lose this child that I've cared for 15 years? Now, I was able to contain that and let my children go, and they went, and they've worked their own way out. But that, some people can't do that. Some people don't find that so easy. And I think, reflecting on your experience, you've moved to a position now where you have stuck your head above the parapet, which is really, as a birth dad, I think you're the only birth dad that I know or have heard speak out about their experience. Why did you do that, and what are you seeking to achieve with the work that you're doing with PAC UK?
I was asked by PAC UK back in 2022 if I'll be quite happy to share my story. Now, it's been something that I've been keeping hold of for 10, 11 years
Yeah.
that I've, I don't very, I very rarely speak to anybody about it. Because the last thing you want to be doing is getting judged because your daughter's been taken into care and then adopted. Um, so it was one of them that I wanted to get my mental health back on track. But in 2014 stroke 15, I suffered a heart attack at the age of 29. And it put me back a bit. And I didn't have any support around me because when I reached out for the support from the likes of Adoption UK about Letterbox, I didn't get anything from them. It was only in 2019 that I was introduced to PAC UK. But at that time, I was anxiety took over. I had anxiety before even coming on to tonight with yourself. I sat here thinking I'm just going to bolt in a minute. I'm going to go. That much anxiety that I logged on a good an hour and a half before actually coming on to you. So it's one of them things that, yes, I suffer with mental health myself and I suffer with anxiety. So coming into contact with PAC UK back in 2019, it built my confidence that I wasn't the only one. There's not other people out there as well. That there is other people out there, should I say, that are in a similar situation to me. They've lost children to adoption, and I decided that enough's enough now. My heart condition isn't the best, but I'm going to go into this feet first and put myself out there. And leading up to some of the meetings that we had before Adoption Week in 2022, I was attending these meetings in my hospital bed after suffering quite severe angina attacks. So as soon as I did my recording with PAC UK for the Adoption Week, I knew from there that I needed to keep this going. I had a trip to London June last year as well, which was very interesting because I'd never thought in my lifetime that I would be going to the House of Lords, is it? Parliament. So I went there to speak about my experiences in front of a select few people, which they were quite intrigued by it. So with having that and what I did in October at the Adoption Week, I knew, like I said, I needed to take this further. I needed to do what I could possibly do to bring this adoption service into the 21st century. And I've been working with PAC UK quite frequently, to be honest. I meet up with the groups every month, and I meet different birth parents. There's more birth dads coming to these groups to express their feelings of what's going on in their lives and their experiences of the adoption, which is, from what I've been told, is the most men that they've encountered in the Northwest. So I was quite happy with that, and I want to try and keep that going. But I've always stated that I'm not in this for my own gains. If anything happens between me and my daughter's adoptive parents, that contact goes further than what it already is, it's a big bonus. I'm in it to change it for the future. To make sure that the children that are being taken into the care system are being taken into the care system for the right reasons. And I don't personally think that all children that are in the care system at this moment in time need to be there. My daughter in 2010, she didn't need to be in the care system. She had perfectly good family members, myself, all capable of looking after her, but it was to social services the best interest of that child to come away from the family altogether. And I think it's hard for birth dads to come out and speak, because we do get put in the same category as some birth dads or partners in some cases, of domestic violence and stuff. And the first thing when the child gets taken away is that, have we done something? Are we the problem? And because of the select few that are through domestic violence and domestic abuse and stuff, it then hinders over other people, including myself, that you get judged straight away on who you are. That book cover never gets opened, and they don't want to get to know you better. So teaching the social services to actually train them, should I say, not teach them, train them to actually take the responsibility and look into every single angle first, instead of thinking it's best to take this child into the care system. Because once that child's in that care system, it's very very difficult to bring that child away from the care system until adoption. And when that child's gone through to the adoption period and is placed full time, they're not under the social services anymore. They're not in the care system. They're out of it. And it's shocking, because if at the end of the day, if that child's been in the care system, they should still be in that care system for a few years, just to make sure that child is all right in that placement, not just a few months, a few years. So yeah, I'm here now. I'm going to put myself out there as much as possible. It might hinder my contact. I hope it doesn't. I hope it makes it a better contact, more bonding. But I want to bring it out there that not everybody is the same person 5, 6, 7 years later. Even if they have got drug addictions, alcoholism, if I cannot really say it properly, but they have that right to change. If they want to change, they will change. So why is it that it's got to be put out there that once the adoption has gone through, you can't be reviewed? I should really have a review now, or 5 years down the line, I should have had a review. Especially having children and stuff like that. I should have been reviewed just to think, actually, we could bring this contact forward.
Yeah.
But all I ever got was, it's not in the court documents. It's not this. It's not that. So for me to come out and say all this is hoping to try and make them realise that for the child's well-being, and to understand that their history of birth parents can be a lot easier earlier on in their life than when they turn 18.
Yeah.
Because you can help a child who isn't quite understanding. You haven't had contact with them since they were 2 to 3 years old. So 15, 16 years later, you're trying to help them get through all this, and like their mental health is why were they put up for adoption? Why wasn't we able to look after them? And it's really difficult. I'm not able to answer them questions, and that's going to be the most difficult thing when I do get a chance to meet her again, which I hope is soon.
Yeah. Andy, I really appreciate you giving me your time, and sort of your experience has been, it sort of shines a light on across the whole process, from, social care involvement through, assessment, through court, contact, and beyond. So I really appreciate you giving me your time. And you've been so honest in regard to all aspects of, your experience. And what we'll do is we'll put your Twitter handle on in the podcast notes, and we'll point people towards the recent PAC report as well, so people can kind of get an idea of that. And I think there's a presentation as well, which I think you were at as well, and people can see your face there and see what you're doing. So thank you so much, Andy, for your time, and I wish you well, and in all the plans and hopes for the future.
No, very welcome. I'm more than happy to do it any other time as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much.